So everybody, Shabbat Shalom and happy, beautiful day. And I'm thrilled to be here with you. And I'm having a little bit of deja vu because I was in this very room on Sunday night teaching, but I did bring the right class. We're not going to redo that one today. And today's Parsha that I was lucky enough to be chosen for is Naso. And I'm going to start by asking you, when you start researching Naso, there's a descriptive word that always comes up. Does anybody have a clue what people describe Naso about? One word, one adjective. This is your first test question. There'll be several.
Longest.
Yeah, I said Ron's going to be the one. It's the longest Parsha. Okay, so what we're talking about is we're in, if you're looking, you really don't need your book. The handouts were also available online, but we're looking in Bamidbar or Numbers, and this is chapter 4, and it's got a lot of stuff in it. And I hope you brought lunch and dinner because we will be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A quick anecdote about the length of this parsha, which
Okay.
and I'll continue, but I'm one of the Torah readers. I grew up in my congregation. There was once a family that I didn't realize the parsha, but a family asked me if I could read 2 Torah portions for his son's bar mitzvah. And they read full, here we read the perennial there, the congregation was in full reading. I said, sure, because normally I'm okay. And so a couple nights before the bar mitzvah, I turned to the Torah portions, and one is 30 psukim and the other is 45 psukim. And the family could have given me a heads up that these are like the longest Torah portions in the Torah. But
thank you.
Okay.
That brings it more to life. But thank you. So the name of this parsha is Naso. And in what book is it? In Hebrew or English? I'll take either one. Bamidbar. Okay, great. Fine. So we're going to do, I actually exaggerated a bit of how long I'm going to keep you here. We're going to just do a quick overview because there's no way in the world that we could look at everything. And I wanted to, many of you know me already, and I prefer to pick out things that are relatable to something that we can take home and use for us. So we're going to look at 2 parts here. But essentially, aside from it being the longest parsha, a little bit of content is that it begins with a very, very provocative concept of a census. You know how much fun those are. Okay, and it's about 3 groups, the Gershonites, the Maronites, the Kohatites, whoever they are, who are between, and we're talking males, although they don't say that here, between the ages of 30 and 50 is conducted. And it's about related to their capacity to do duties in the Mishkan, okay? And then God speaks to Moshe, and he talks about people who are ritually unclean and repentance and what they have to do. And one of the things that is a big part of this is the idea of a woman who is suspected of adultery. Okay. It starts getting interesting. Okay. Then we talk about the Nazirite vows. Has anyone heard the word Nazirite? Nazir in Hebrew? Okay, more on that a little bit later, and that's explained. And there's a whole bunch in Talmud about Nazirites also. We're not going there today. And then God tells Moses how to teach, God shares the priestly blessing, Birkat HaKohanim, this one from Star Trek that I don't do very as well as I used to do. Okay.
It's actually the other one.
Okay, he's my straight man. Right. It's actually the other way around. You know that, don't you? Tell him about them anyway.
What about him?
About his Star Trek thing.
That's what he used to do.
Yeah. In his character, he incorporated that as a
whatever. Dr. Spock. Mr. Spock. He was called Dr. Spock. That was the other guy.
Okay, so and then there's a meeting between Hashem and Moshe. Okay. So that's the overview of this longest chapter, and we're going to delve in with some detail to if I can find got it. It's two parts of this and then go on. But essentially what in a general umbrella kind of topic today, we're going to talk about things that you might not be fully aware of that Jews have done or that Jews currently do. And I thought it might be appropriate for me to start the same way I started the class that I taught on Tikkun Leil Shavuot here, which was about weird Jewish practices. And if you were here, this is only a minute long. Forgive me for the repetition. If you weren't here, I'm going to share it with you now. We have a lot of practices that people would consider, if they don't know us, to be really, really weird. So I'm going to ask you to use for your imagination. I think this is a repeat. Use your imagination and say that you have enrolled yourself in an anthropology class and you're going on a field trip to learn about this weird group of people called the Jews. And you know nothing about the Jews. You vaguely heard the term before, but it's just been something in a textbook, a chapter you didn't get to yet. On the way, I'm sorry, something wrong? Okay, the Jews. Okay. So I'm on the bus on the way into this field trip to learn about the Jews. The instructor tells you, first of all, you need to expect something that you probably won't, which is that the Jews always, when they gather, are in a building that has high security. So you're going to have to go through security. When we get there as a class, we find out from the person who's leading the introduction to the Jewish culture, some habits that Jews do, and think about them. One of them is waving a long stick in several directions sometimes in the synagogue. Okay, another one is holding a rooster over your head and making circles. Okay. Actually being extremely rude by stomping your feet during a religious service, and even throwing candy at the person who's leading. Sometimes there's kissing of a door frame when you walk into a room, okay? And one of the most shocking ones is that they actually give wine to little tiny babies. Okay. Rumor has it that some families tape the buttons on their refrigerators on Friday night, okay? And the weirdest one of all is that when they send Amazon gift cards, they're in the amount of $54. I put $18 on.
2 shekels. That's 36.
So my point is that we do have some things that we need to learn about. And once we've learned, they make perfect sense. I'm going to take a leap here and assume that, and you can see me privately after class if any one of these needs an explanation, but I'm assuming because we're kind of in the in crowd, that these don't seem at all weird to us. But they think about it. If you put yourself in the position I put you in for a sec, they're pretty weird. I can't resist. This isn't in my script, but I'm going to tell you one of my favorite ones, which is the person, and this is true, and it's probably happened many times, but I know of one, who was traveling on a flight on Pesach, and they brought his meal. They said, "Here's your kosher meal, sir." And he said, "This meal isn't kosher. It was kosher last week, and it'll be kosher next week." Okay, so yeah, we've got some weird customs. Okay, so I want to look at two particular parts, and you have the documents. If you want to read along in a Eitz Chaim or other one, we're talking about Numbers 5:11 and going on. But we have you have two sheets there on two different sections. I think they're perhaps stapled together. So the first one is called Sota. Is that familiar, that word, to any of you? Mm-hmm. Okay, what is it? What does it tell you? And briefly. What? Disgusting things. Good reaction. Okay. An adulterous.
Accused.
Thank you. All right. The word means someone who deviates, a deviant, basically, which is a demeaning thing, which is a negative thing. It doesn't equate. It's related to the word adulterous, but it itself does not. Maybe it's come to mean that because words change their kind of meaning. But we're going to look, and I'm going to ask you to bear with me because of time to look. We're going to look at this parsha, and this is right out of text. It's a translation from Sefaria, which every Jewish teacher depends on these days heavily.
JPS.
And this is probably JPS. I don't remember which one I of the choices, that's what I chose. Anyway, we're going to look essentially at what I have bolded, You don't have, we're not gonna read the whole thing. And then there's no, I don't, oh, is this an extra one?
It's not mine.
Okay, there should be some, okay, go ahead, I think we can, I think, okay, I didn't realize we had an extra one. Okay, we're good, but there's apparently some there in the center.
Oh, that's all right, then I only need one, right?
No, there, okay, that's, you need two sheets, okay.
Oh,
Okay.
Supposed to be two sheets statement.
I mean, in the Hebrew, and it came upon him.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah, Bar-
in other words, there is almost
Yeah.
an inference in the words, and it fell on him that, it could be made up, that he decided, I mean.
Okay, well, that's key, but let me go through this. It says that he is wrought up in the suspicion, he's wrought up, whatever, you know, but that's exactly what Sheila's pointing to about his wife. And maybe he doesn't know, he's basically with he's got a feeling. But what's important, there's no witnesses, there's no evidence. But he's got a feeling that his wife has been unfaithful. So what happens
Why isn't
is.
he the sota?
What?
Why isn't he the sota? He's the unusual deviant husband who's suspicious with no facts.
I suspect, Nelson, that it's not so unusual, but let me go on here. Okay, order in the courtroom, please. So what the process is that party, meaning that suspicious husband, shall bring his wife to the priest, and then we're moving to the bold. The priest shall bring her forward and have her stand before Hashem. I'm skipping some of the details, but basically there's water and there's earth involved, or dirt from the floor of the tabernacle. And the priest puts some of that yummy dirt into the water and mixes it around. Okay, and then we're moving down. The priest shall bear the woman's head and place upon her hands the meal offering in remembrance. There was a meal offering reference before. The meal offering of jealousy, which is an interesting offering. And the priest's hands shall be, in the priest's hands shall be the water of bitterness that induces, now here we go, the spell. So now we are talking about a spell, which we're not really that accustomed to seeing in part of the Jewish vocabulary, but it is a thing. And the concept of magic and spells and potions and demons, as weird as they are to us today and as totally unscientific and disproven they are, you have to understand that this is way pre-science. This was the way you explain the unexplainable.
sounds like the witch.
Salem, right?
Into the lake, and if she sinks, she's, a witch. If she floats, she's not,
The only thing I'm gonna say is I think the odds are probably better for this woman than that woman thrown in the lake, unless she's a good swimmer. But yeah, exactly the same kind of idea. So then we have the priest's words, okay, with the priest's words, which are, if no other party has lain with you, if you've not gone astray in defilement while living in your husband's household, be immune to the harm from this water of bitterness that induces spell. But if you have gone astray, turn over to the next page. Okay, we're going down to paragraph 2. May this water that induces the spell enter your body, causing the belly to extend and your thigh to sag. Some of us have that problem without taking this potion. Okay, then the spell will happen, but we're supposed to say when your thigh sags, amen, amen. Okay, and part of this, which is out of, as I understand, not sequential, it doesn't really matter, is that he writes this curse on a piece of parchment and puts that also, that's part of the recipe for this particular potion, and scrumbled it up, sir.
I used to being called sir, but okay.
Yeah, where's this? Sir?
Your husband's household, why isn't it the family household?
Okay, the reason is this is 3,300 years ago. That's the simple answer. And that explains all of this. It was the man's household, okay? Looking at it for our eyes, that's a totally fair question, but we really have to put ourselves in a different period to understand this and look through their eyes. Then I'm gonna bring it forward. I promise you I'm gonna bring it forward. Someone here may know that, I really don't know. I mean, it's certainly in terms of, the daughters of Spot, Spotlight, I always have problem pronouncing it, that they got, they got the opportunity to, but, you know, to have property, but women did not.
I don't want to take us aside, and if you're going to touch this point, but I started with, he says within the Orthodox community, this is one of the proof statements for why women cover.
I'm gonna get there, okay?
Why?
Teach, thank you.
They had uncut.
Let me teach. Yeah, okay, he took my thunder. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Uh,
I
Okay,
caught that one.
I'm gonna get this summary done. So she's made her drink the water, and if she's defiled herself by breaking faith with her husband, the spell shall enter her and bring bitterness, and her belly will descend, and her thighs will sag, and the woman will be cursed, basically. But if she's poor, if she's pure, she's gonna be fine, unharmed, and able to have children. Okay? So two things I want to talk about. We can get, I'm gonna put the hair second. The hair is important, but I'm gonna put that second. This is, as several of you said, our gut reaction is this is debasing of women. This is horrible. This is primitive. This is, you know, witchcraft. This is Salem witchcraft, whatever. This is viewed by a good number of rabbis, even in Talmudic times, as a pro-woman thing. Pro-woman, pro-female. So let's say that we just have a court of words and the woman states her case that she was not unfaithful. Thank you. I don't know why the words are not coming to me today. Unfaithful. And the man accuses her, and whatever she says to him, he's never convinced. There's going to be, for the rest of their lives, this lingering doubt. This particular mechanism offers an opportunity for, in that world, proof that if she passes the test, she is clear, she is not guilty, and he has to go on. And if he believes this, which we assume was the mental state of folks at that time, this was a valid way of providing proof. So this gives a woman the freedom to go on. So that's why the twist maybe is hard for us to understand, you know, going back 3,000 years, but this was a smart thing that was put into Torah. The only way a woman could walk with a clean slate in the future. The truth is, there may be an element of those women who were not faithful, who weren't bothered by the water, you know, but the concept is the power of suggestion in psychology. Think about it. If you say all these things, and if you have a guilty conscience, you might start retching or something from this water, because it's kind of going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
But
Okay.
it probably also damaged some women internally. I mean, it caused them never to have children.
I didn't come across that, but
The idea that it was.
oh, the idea, right, the psychological
The Orthodox stuff.
okay, I don't want to go there. We don't know who's around this table and you don't know me, so forgive me. Typical of some people, I'm happy with that. I just don't want the label, please. Please go on with just some groups, yes?
Yeah, they make something good, and they're right. I mean, when they put it down, it's right, that the women are protected by some of the things. And they're not looking at the needing.
Again, everything you say is absolutely right, depending on where you're coming from. I'm gonna say, this is not, the idea that this was a pro-woman thing is not new. This is in Talmud, this discussion. This mechanism was created so that women would have a way to prove, they would provide proof. This is not a new thing in any denomination.
And the key is that if it all works out, it provides stability for the family.
Absolutely.
And that's the critical
Right,
thing,
exactly. Peace of
because
mind.
without that,
Right.
you know, there's nothing.
And we go back to one of the mitzvot, I seem to quote a lot, shalom bait. Bottom line, that's what we're looking for here. Absolutely. Okay, yes.
Assuming there isn't anything. I feel have been.
The laws are so lax for a man. The
Who
truth
do you
is they
think
can
he was
pretty much do
allowed then?
anything.
He could do anything he wanted.
A man could pretty much do anything they want. So, and you can make somebody a second or a third or a 12th wife for a second if you choose to also.
Adultery, yeah.
Well, adultery is a woman cheating on her husband in that time. That's the definition at that time. Now, a man has needs. This is not Cheryl. Okay. Yes.
If you're gonna get to this, stop me.
She'll stop me after I maybe don't get to it.
Coordinate.
We're gonna move on from this topic. Is it on this topic?
Yes, it
Then
is.
please go ahead.
Because I don't see it listed unless I'm missing.
There's nothing listed. This is text. Okay.
So my understanding is that if they choose, well, there's another option. If they choose not to do this, then they could put out the gate and there's all of that issue. And so it's not simply drink this or not drink this, but it's another thing. And it could, one could argue that the drinking of this is also indicative of their belief in the higher power. Even though we think of it as magic, they're probably thinking that that's
definitely.
God, right? It's a punishment from God. And so in a way, it's also indicating whether they have that belief, which goes back to the Ten Commandments and all of that.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move, yes.
Then we move on.
But you're absolutely right. Everything you said is spot on. Okay, so I'm gonna make my little bit of presentation about the hair, the uncovering the hair, and then we'll take 2 or 3 comments because there's quite a bit in this parsha, and I do want to cover it because I guess I'm gonna take the teacher priority prerogative. What was said is correct. The only thing this is the principal proof text about that women covered their hair, Israelite women covered their hair. What is very interesting is, again, there is a strong belief today. I think the average man or woman on the street would say that today women cover their hair for modesty. At some level, and there's different levels of hair covering. We know all of the wig thing. We know, I get all the partial band, all of that kind of stuff. But that actually, that is something that is rabbinic and came down through certain communities and became down in some communities much stronger than others. And some rabbis are actually saying, even almost contemporary, not like this week contemporary, but the past 30, 40 years, that there's no different, all hair on your body, you can use your own imagination, is the same. So nothing should be shown. So, so that's but that implies that this particular reason is something related to tzniut, to modesty. Okay. However, the other thing that is quoted much more frequently going back to when I was a child, 2,500 years ago, was that a teenager, right? Was that this was the way of Israelite women. The way of Israelite women is to cover your hair. Israelite women cover their hair. That was the custom of dress of Israelite women. There was no because after that. So there actually very much is a stream of people, if you will ask them, particularly in observant, I don't know, if you make it's so hard. That's why I dislike the word Orthodox, because I know many Orthodox people, very few of them fit in the same thing as the one next door to them. But in terms of people who cover their hair, a lot of them will say that's the way of the Israelite. This is our tradition. So we're doing it that way for that reason. It has nothing to do with tzniut, with modesty. So the way, in terms of finding an actual early from Sinai in Torah reference to modesty, it ain't there. This is really, and there may be, but I couldn't find, this is really the text that is pointed to, that is the proof text that Israelite women covered their hair.
Are they saying that all women?
No, this is, what you see is what you got. But what we know is that we are not a literal people, that what it says in one line of the Torah literally becomes a whole tractate of Talmud with arguments from many and discussions. That's what Talmud is. Talmud is totally discussions. Many of the things do have a majority decision. Many more do not have a majority decision. So people will say, I hold by Rav so-and-so. And the other one say, well, I hold by Rav so-and-so. They're both fine. Okay, I don't hold by any rub. I didn't hear that. Okay, we had side conversation here, but okay, that's fine. But that, I just thought it was interesting to share with you, this thing with the hair. There's no secret that many people are moving, polarizing in terms of extremes. And this is kind of offensive, and that kind of thing in terms of people who hold the sniut, the modesty justification. But that came along a lot later, is probably stronger today than it ever was, or as strong. And absolutely, I don't know, probably, I don't know your background. I grew up modern Orthodox. There was nobody in my family, and everybody was legit Shomer Shabbat, modern Orthodox. Nobody, no woman covered their hair. My grandma never covered her hair. Mom never covered her. None of the people. And I have some friends here in Beechwood who grew up similar. They don't have this hair covering kind of thing either. One of the famous lines that I came across in prepping for this was Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. You may have heard of him. Somebody had said to him, how come your wife doesn't cover her hair? This is in the 50s. And he said, you win some and you lose some.
That's my grandmother one. This was in, after why didn't you cover your hair? Because we were modern Orthodox. Also, she didn't, I couldn't afford it.
That's probably a different reason, and maybe, and the other thing, to be fair, is communities vary. Okay, and you may have another viewpoint.
No, I just had a question saying, you were saying traditionally, Israelite women covered their hair.
I'm saying that this text says that.
But it doesn't say really what was the reason for them to begin with covering their hair. Doesn't sound to be the religion issue.
Exactly.
Maybe it was the matter.
Exactly.
Well, wait.
It also could be, when you think about it, the Arabs and whatnot cover their hair. I mean.
Mizrahi Jews covered more, yeah.
In other words, they may have taken without realizing it.
I think that happens all the time. We as a diaspora people have taken on customs of that's normal, of our particular environment. And we are shocked when we hear it's totally different in a different part of the world. One of the things that was I'm going back to my Sunday class, forgive me, and I didn't even talk about this on Sunday, I ran out of time, but we're so used to breaking a glass under the chuppah. Does anyone know another way that you remember the destruction of the temple under the chuppah?
You float against the
No. Okay, Mr. You in the gray jacket?
Who's been sitting here wondering why you have picked the foolish, jealous husband.
No, okay.
Putting that aside, ashes.
Ashes. And so many people are aware of this. Ashes, and people, when I mentioned this in another group sometime, they said that they went to a chuppah in New York. I have no idea what flavor wedding it was. Probably Sephardi or Mizrahi kind of culture. Anyway, the rabbi who came from Israel to perform the ceremony brought ashes from Yerushalayim that they put on their forehead. Doesn't that sound like somebody else's custom? Now, if it started in Mizrahi as in the Middle East, then chances are this is originated by the Jews, not the other way around. So,
Yeah.
you know, but all of these things that, you know, to us, we don't, so that's just simply to the point of, there's a lot of regional variation, including in hair cover. But if you look, if you've ever seen a picture of a Chabad Lubavitch woman's thing in 1948 or 50, at the time when Schneerson was young, the women are just wearing little hats, little pillbox hats. That's it.
Yeah, this didn't have to do, when you say modesty, have to do with the woman making herself less alluring.
Okay, that's one of the
I mean,
big
isn't that
discussions.
right? And
One
the
of the- I
same
can give another
reason that
person a
they're
chance. I'm sorry.
separated in services by the.
There are people who believe that. I think that people and I think de facto that happens, but nobody is gonna say that's the purpose of it. So it's fair to think that it's absolutely officially not the reason. I'm gonna take one more comment. We're gonna go on because there's so much to talk about. Is there any? Okay, Sheila.
When we were in Muncie taking a walk on the shopping center, we noticed that there are different, let's see, each one had their own style of, when you talk about
Fedora, right.
boxes, like a tiara, and they were wearing a shadel. but they had the era over it.
Right.
To tell which group they were from.
There is a film called The Hats of Jerusalem. If you haven't seen it, it's the same idea. You can tell by somebody's hair covering, this is all male, what their community is. Well, not, or there might not be a hat. I mean, a kippah sruga used to be modern Orthodox.
Men.
I'm talking about men.
Yeah,
Yeah, man, a knit colorful kippah was always modern Orthodox. I serve in the army. You know, and then the darker you get, the chances are you're not gonna, it's ridiculous, but it's the code in the kippot. The hair coverings apply to some degree to the women's hair coverings as well. Let's move on, please, to the next chapter, which is the Nazirite laws. And we're going, has everybody here known of anyone firsthand who has taken a Nazirite vow? Currently, contemporary?
I didn't know it was still.
You know that you and I happen to know the same person. Yeah, it's still going, it's still law. Yeah, it actually is a little bit still going. Okay, so when we think of taking a vow of abstinence, and please note the air quotes, everybody. Nelson, are you paying attention? Helena, Jackie, Carol, okay, okay. When you take a vow of abstinence, we typically don't do what?
Drink.
Drink.
Cut your hair.
Cut your hair. I'm talking about generally, what,
Well,
no sexual relations, what else?
Chocolate.
Chocolate. That's in my second dessert, and I haven't lived that way. Okay, okay. Sometimes a vow of silence being, okay, sometimes eating very basic food, you know, restricting diet, all those kinds of things. So let's look at it from the Nazirite point of view. Okay, so again, to the bolds, please, this is the second page. It says, speak to the Israelites and say, oh, I'm sorry, before I start this, I have to tell you that
It's the second page.
we had talked about that the link that there's the Haftorah is connected to Nassau in some way. So in this particular Haftorah, this woman unnamed, the wife of Manoach, goes to the high priest and says, I need to have a child. I have to have a child. It's kind of similar to the Hannah story, but not. At any rate, and the high priest says, we worked it out. You're going to have a child, and you have to, until you delivered the baby, you're not going to do. And then he lists the Nazirite thing. So there is an example of that happens there. The baby's name, they name him Samson. Sound familiar? Okay, so that's the Nazirite that we, frequently jump to. The Nazirite that Norm and I do was totally different, definitely not named Samson.
Samuel also.
No, no, he's a prophet.
I don't think so. Maybe.
What was the question?
Okay, Samuel took a Nazir vow?
Was a Nazarite too.
He was sort of.
Okay, well, I'll study that. I will look that up, but right now, so if any man or woman, and please note, this is equality. If any man or woman explicitly utter a Nazirite vow to set themselves apart for Hashem. Okay, it's gonna come down, I summarize it at the bottom, there's a summary of all of these things, but I thought one of the things that was interesting is they're not to eat, we know about wine, but I highlighted here, can't eat grapes either. What?
Turn to white.
Okay, because it's a fence law. Yeah, kind of thing. Okay, they cannot drink grapes either, or dried grapes, which I guess we would call raisins, either throughout their term as a Nazirite. Okay. And then another thing that's interesting is even if their father or their mother or their brother or their sister should die, they must not become defiled for any of them, since their hair is set apart for God on their heads. Okay. I'm sorry, these are out of order, but the summary thing comes later in the text. I didn't create the way it's presented in Torah. But what is this different from when you talk about a restriction? Who else doesn't do going near the dead? Kohen. Okay, but a Kohen
Could go for the.
go for their parents or a close relative, but a Nazirite cannot. Okay, so here is the restrictions. A Nazirite or a Nazir in Hebrew is an individual who vows abstinence from wine, haircuts, and ritual impurity generated from contact with corpses. Those are basically the three. Laws related to Nazirites are described in number 6. Okay. There's also a ton of stuff in Talmud. Okay. Speak to the Israelite, and this is from Tanakh, the quote. Speak to the Israelites and say to them, if any man or woman explicitly utter a Nazirite vow to set themselves apart for Hashem, shall abstain from wine and any other intoxicant. They shall not drink vinegar of wine or any other intoxicant. Neither shall they drink anything in which grapes have been steeped, nor eat grapes fresh or dried. Throughout their term as a Nazirite. There's a term as a Nazirite. Okay, they may not eat anything that is obtained from the grapevine, even the Caesar skin. Throughout the term of their vow as a Nazirite, no razor shall touch their head. Okay, so what we've got here that's really, really important, because there's some commentary on this kind of thing, is that there's a term. You set the term, and you can become a Nazir for 30 days. And you're obligated to set a term. What you are not allowed to do in Torah, and I know that there are people who are obsessive and they end the term for a day and then they go back and make a new term. That's actually not the intent. Right, right, okay, yeah, then you take a new term.
Samuel was a Nazirite, or he was kept. There were different rules, and Hannah had to bring him to Eli, the high priest, to dedicate himself.
Right, okay, well, right, exactly, because it's a whole lifetime thing, so, yeah, so that's probably the distinction. This is term limited. This is term limited, and a typical term seem to be 30 days, and you could renew, but I just want to finish my sentence and I'll be happy to call on you, sir. Okay, just 1 second, which is essentially that it is actually mandated in all of the I've not read all. In all of the commentary that I have read, that you must have a term and you must end it, because it's against Torah to deprive yourself of the things that God offered. They're on the earth for you to enjoy properly, but enjoy. This deprivation thing, you don't get brownie points as if you were an ascetic monk in a monastery in Thailand or wherever you happen to be, and not talking, not eating, not anything. Yes.
Well, just to expand on your Thailand reference, I spent quite a bit of time there. It's very common for young men to serve as monks for 2 weeks, a month, a year, also very time limited.
Okay. I don't know, in the Catholic Church, that people take a vow forever? I don't know what they do, the celibate, we know celibacy is, okay, that's important. What's not on this list, guys, is living with your family, and you're not supposed to be celibate. Because one of the commandments is pruing and vrewing. We know about that one? To prue and to brew, to be fruitful and to multiply. Okay, so there's not, you don't take a vow of celibacy, that's a no-no, yes.
It actually made me just think of a line from Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. I tied you to a kitchen chair and cut your hair, and I actually didn't understand it until we started.
Yeah, that's important, and that really is, I love it. It's
asceticism.
Asceticism. This is asceticism light or asceticism limited. And there are many people who don't drink wine or grape juice, you know, they go out. There are people who don't cut their hair. Staying away, I'm sure there are people for maybe other reasons don't go near a cemetery too. So I don't know, but again, we got to take this back to the time that it was an origin. This was a statement. I don't want to minimize it. What's super, super important about this is the word vow. This is a vow. Okay, this is a neder, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that's important. But you have okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you're covered, but the intent, why would, I mean, I understand it's giving God the hair, giving a person the time, but I don't really, because if it could be a week or 2 years, is the benefit the same or different? Do we understand really that intent?
Okay, I want to see what Nina has to say, and then I'll be happy to address that.
Okay.
Either I missed it or we didn't talk about it. Why are they becoming there?
Okay, that's what we're gonna start. That's why okay, so it's exactly, so if you're taking this vow and it's your choice to take this vow, with the idea of Shmuel, and that's a unique story, and he's got his own, you know, book about that. But for we regular folks, basically this was, again, if we can talk about what psychology was at that time, this was a tool. This was a tool that maybe be suggested to people, or maybe that they self-suggest, that it's a way that they can control some impulses, that they can make a distinction between one behavior, the way they've been as a person, and take a break in their lives in a different way, and then come out of this with new goals, new behaviors, that kind of thing. And really, one of the things that, at least in terms of, there is actually this incredible Rabbi Rosenzweig in Israel, who is only deals with he's not a pulpit rabbi. He deals with mentally ill people and his particular issues. This is a tool, not only his, he didn't invent it, for people who feel unworthy, that they do something for God and it builds up their self-esteem. A, that they did it for God, and B, that they actually completed that 30 days or 60 days.
Maybe you think also people who are alcoholic.
100%. 100%. As somebody shared with me who knew a Nazir, that was the reason, and it didn't work. You know, it was short, but alcoholism is, we know a lot about it, the reasons that it wouldn't work. I want to see, nobody's on the screen, anything?
Well, it's just interesting because it almost is in contraposition to performing the mitzvot. We're told performing mitzvot is for God, and that's a wonderful thing. And then here we had to come up with this more, I understand it's in the time, but it's just interesting.
Maybe let's put this on the category of for people who need help, therapeutic mitzvot or something like that.
Right.
Not for everybody.
I was actually thinking about this and comparing it to the quote unquote leper who has to leave the camp. The difference being that this is self-imposed and that's not.
And it's time limited and that,
Well, they're both time limited.
well, different ways.
It's not always self-imposed. Sometimes a mother will say, I'm gonna donate my kid, right? I mean, we have that one.
We only have that once.
It's like, well, we haven't once recorded, but it's not, the kid doesn't have the choice.
Yes, one more and then I want to go on, Cheryl.
I just noticed there's a sentence at the bottom of page 799. That one reason is that they just want to be on a much higher level.
Okay, I'm gonna counter that, not because of me, but because of wise rabbis from the past. In terms of being close to God, in terms of what I would say core Judaic values for we regular folks. But I'm gonna take a word from our sponsor, take a break for a second, because we're coming back to this text, I still would like to look at the bottom 2/3 of that, the reverse side of the Nazarite sheet. There's a title about 1/3 of the way down that says The Extraordinary Nazarite Vow of Queen Helena. Some of you may have known about Queen Helena. I had never heard, so I said, who is Queen Helena? Okay, I'm gonna tell you. Pardon me? Let's see, it could be. Okay, I don't, you'll tell us more. I'm gonna tell you what I found out. Okay, then no. Different Helena. Okay, so so this is, well, let's, just because of time, I mean, it's fun to guess, but just because of time and because I'm such a tough cookie, I'm gonna just, again, as I say, this is a little break just so that we have background. So this is, thank you, Rabbi Wikipedia. No, Rabbi, My Jewish Learning, excuse me. Helena of Adi Ben, in Hebrew, what is it? Halni, I guess it's Halni, yeah, Halni. Okay, Helene. Okay, she lived in about the year 30 of the Common Era. That's where you're gonna put her place. She was the queen mother of somebody, and she was part of the, never heard of it, Parthian Empire. Okay, and she had quite a few kids, and she was the mother of somebody whose name was Monabaz. Okay, what's interesting is that she converted to Judaism, and that's a different Helena, right? Okay, she's basically, this is recorded by Josephus. And she was the daughter of kings and all of this. You don't need the whole lineage of this kind of thing. But what is known about her comes basically from Josephus. And he was about contemporary with her, more or less, in terms of the time living. And she lived in Jerusalem and she was buried in Jerusalem, and she was extremely charitable for causes to build Jerusalem and for needy people in Jerusalem. She was a kind, valiant, beautiful woman, highly generous. There was a famine in Jerusalem about the year 45 of the Common Era, and she shipped in stuff from Alexandria, to grains to help people with the famine. So I want to give a shout out to Queen Helena, who I had never heard about, and now we have learned about. So one of the things she did.
She has a tomb.
That's right. That's right. Okay, next time I go, I will, because I didn't know about her in Yerushalayim. Exactly. So this is we're looking at 1/3 of the way down on the page. Queen Helena's Nazarite vow is a fascinating example of extraordinary dedication and commitment in Jewish history. The Mishnah discusses the length and complexity of her vow, highlighting differing rabbinic opinions on its duration and the unique circumstances of her extended abstinence. It happened that Queen Helena, when her son went to war, said, "If my son returns in peace from the war, I shall be a Nazarite for 7 years." Her son returned from the war, and she was a Nazarite for 7 years. At the end of the 7 years, she went up to the land of Israel, and Beit Hillel instructed her to be a Nazarite for a further 7 years. Okay, I don't like that, but it happened. Towards the end of these 7 years, she contracted ritual defilement, probably a corpse. And so altogether, she was a Nazarite for 21 years. Of course, this is disputed in Talmud. Rabbi Yehuda says it wasn't the other 7 years, even though that's Rabbi said you should do it. She didn't. 14 years was enough. Okay, so now you know about my new heroine for today. Anyway, there we go. The last thing about, go ahead.
I just want to say that I read about Rachel Holland Goldberg.
Yeah.
That when her son Hirsch was kidnapped, she also would only eat 1 meal a day because he was only eting 1 meal a day. She wouldn't wear her hair down, she would only wear it up. It sounds like she might have.
Do you know anything about her? She's an incredibly brilliant, fabulous, exemplary woman, as are unfortunately many of the mothers of our martyrs. Anyway, yeah, she's a Jewish educator, we found out after the fact in the Jewish world, there are lots of connections. But one of the connections we found out after the fact, Norm and I, is that we and our Cleveland kids did one Pesach at Ramat Arom outside of Atlanta, the Passover program, and her family was there as well. At that point, thank God, nobody was famous and nobody needed to know. But I remember the thing about the 1 meal, and I don't know, let me just say that kind of slides into what I want to talk about penultimately, which is the idea of making a vow, a personal vow of some sort. And yeah, it is reminiscent. It's not exactly Nazarite, kind of thing, right? Okay, so I just want to look at, my friend Musar. We talked about Musar the last time. If we have time, I'll give you a short Musar teaching today. But I want you to know that, again, let's look in the bold here. We talk about reaching a higher level. Many sources disagree that taking a Nazarite vow for the reason of reaching a higher level, not for the reason of being curative in terms of somebody needing that kind of tool for their own, issues, psychological issues, but in terms of being a better person as such. In the bold, Simon the Just disapproved because he considered it a sin to renounce pleasures which God created for the benefit of people. Simon was one of many. So this is early. When we get to Musar, which basically started in the Middle Ages and is basically codified, if you want to call it that, in the last 1,000 years, Musar says specifically, taking on additional vows of abstinence, such as those of a Nazarite, is seen as sinful because it involves denying oneself pleasures that the Torah does not forbid. Orchot Tzadikim, which we studied the last time I taught here, which was maybe 3 or 4 months ago, emphasizes the importance of balance and moderation. And that's basically the Musar way, is there's nothing inherently, everything has the potential for good and the potential for bad, and balance is the key. But deprivation is really not let's say, mainstream Judaism, except when we talk about this rabbi who's also a psychotherapist and says that that tool helps some of his clients, you know, for specific issues for a period of time. Yes. Somebody, I thought I saw, yes.
Yes, Judaism's about sanctification of life. And, you know, all of these things, you know, sex, eating, marriage, you know, the whole thing is.
See? All of those things had the potential for evil. They also had the potential for good. Yes.
But yeah, but Judaism is not.
That's what I'm saying. That's
Right.
right, exactly.
No, I mean, the Qumran community was, you know, there was a lot of asceticism.
Right.
There was a ascetic set.
Right, and you know where they are today.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. It's a great example. Okay, so there's a 3-letter word in this that is really important which is the word vow. This is a big word. If you've done any Talmud, you know that there's a whole tractate, Nedarim, the word neder.
Barbara.
I don't want to miss,
That's- Oh, hi, you got Malia.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's coming, it's soon. So,
Okay.
yeah. So,
Thank you.
Yep. So.
Okay. There is, have any of you heard somebody say, I'll call you next week, bli neder? Okay, what does that mean? Does anyone know? I'm not taking a vow. So isn't that terrible that you say something and you say right away, I'm retracting it because I didn't mean it? That's actually not what you're saying. What you're saying is that you are recognizing, and it's hard for us, particularly in our culture today, that Judaism really puts a tremendous amount of weight in words and specifically in different kinds of vows. And when you say bli neder after something, that's gonna, you know, I'll call you later, or I'll get back to you. I'll send you that phone number. I'll email you his address. If you're really technical about it, if you don't say bli neder, because that makes no sense in your world, you say, I'll do my best to. And that covers it. Or I say, and I'm comfortable with it, God willing, I'll be there, you know, kind of thing. That's a Cheryl thing. But I really am, everybody's got I am really overly intolerant to people who say, I'll call you next week without, and I realize it's a social formula to say sign off on something that way. But I just wanted the idea of vow, understanding that this is a big deal, and this is a particular vow that maybe is a bit bigger deal. Yes, Lois.
So I was gonna say, so at Kol Nidre, when we are asked to be absolved or relinquish all of our vows, so if you're a Nazarite, do you get then a little break?
That one doesn't, it doesn't say, there's nothing in the Ashamnu, there's nothing about, no, well, first of all, those vows are for future vows, you know, when you're Zdei Kol Nidre.
They are now.
They are not, right, probably not in their time, but let's, come on, make me look good, like I know what to do. Okay, I am not an expert in Nazarite laws, but I don't think you get, because it's not something to apologize for, as long as you do it under the rules of, if you are davening in an Orthodox Yizkor service, and maybe it's here, I think in the Yizkor service here in the Siddur, it says, I pledge to give charity, or does it not say that?
Yes.
Okay, in an Orthodox Siddur, it will say, I pledge to give charity bli neder. That's in the text when you're doing Yizkor because of the reason I just mentioned, which you're still expected to give charity, but you're not going to make a sin if you forget. Okay, it's specifically the text. So that's so we've done some Parsha. I'm always thinking you folks have studied this Parsha many, many times, and I try to bring you something new. I hope that there was some thought to this, some understanding at a different level. And I'd just kind of like to end with going back to, or sort of under the link of things that Jews do, Jewish practices and such, and going back sort of full circle to Musar, which was referenced a few moments ago, but I taught and got really an amazing amount of kind comments from you the last time I taught here, is just a little bit of fun I think maybe you don't think it's fun. For me, it's fun about some Musar suggestions just to recap if you weren't here. Basically, when Musar, you try to improve yourself, not really for the main goal of improving yourself, but the Musar concept is that each of us improves the world. The net benefit will be, the world will be a better place. So you're doing it for a bigger picture than just yourself. And you take some period of time to work on a particular trait. And the trait could be lazy, and the trait could be impatient, whatever it could be. So I was looking through one of my favorite Musar books, and 4 little examples of suggestions. These are suggested practices. This is not Torah. Musar is wisdom from people who have thought about it. This is not anything that you're going to find in Sinai, an original text. Okay, so if the particular, and these are mostly from Orchot Tzadikim, that book that I quoted earlier, that the Musar prohibition about abstinence was in that little paragraph we just read. So this particular one is working on being generous, to be more generous. And the practice that they're suggesting, and this is, I shouldn't say take it lightly. Some of these are tough, but it may work. What they are saying is that for whatever period of time it takes, and they basically focus on a week or at the most a month. They don't focus on 7 years of this to build a habit. I don't know. Do 3 generous acts a day, 1 with your money, 1 with your time, and 1 with your caring. It's just a different way of recognizing that there's different kinds of generosity. The pocketbook matters, but giving your time is one that many of us really don't think about being generous with and really values, or doing an act of kindness. Okay, the practice of being a calmer person. The practice is set yourself an activity that you must do when you feel anger coming on, such as drinking a glass of water or changing your shoes before you allow yourself to shout.
Counting to 10.
Counting to 10 would work. Taking a deep breath would work. Taking a pause. I love this one from Rabbi Simcha Zisel Ziv of Chelm. Oh, he's from Chelm, so we don't know. Okay, he says that he had a special jacket that he had set aside to wear only when he was angry. And if he got angry, when I feel angry coming on, I go upstairs and I know I have to get my jacket, put it on. And then I can, by the time I come down, I'm no longer angry. Okay?
Really? I was thinking that.
Okay. We have 2 more. Exhibiting love. Seek opportunities to give gifts to those whom you want to love more. Gifts of money, gifts of time, gifts of caring, gifts of attention. So basically you have to plan ahead. Basically what it's saying. Seek opportunities, look at it. Oh, this is a chance to. Gifts of objects, time, caring, attention, and the like, whatever the like is. Okay, and then the last one I got for today is awe. Being more appreciative, being more awesome, recognizing wonder. Wherever you may be, the city or the country, indoors or outdoors, find moments to open yourself to experience the wonder of creation. And when I learned this, somebody told me about watching ants on the sidewalk. And it does, even that. I'm not so much in awe if they happen to come into my house. I can awe them on the street, on the pavement inside.
Shame their natural habitat.
Anybody have any closing? That's all I got.